Good morning. Welcome. We're a minute early. Oh, welcome. Mark's first session. Amazing. Welcome. Let me know where you're coming in from. It's always fun to hear where people are based out of. Europe. Yeah, lots of Europeans. Late night over there. Welcome. If you've never been to a office hours before, I'm your host, Marie Poulin, and today's session is going to be focused on beginners. We want to make sure that you've got the fundamentals of Notion, because once you understand how Notion works and what you can do with it, you can build almost anything. I know there's a couple folks here who've mentioned they're probably watching because they've maybe been trying to convince a friend, a family member to use Notion as well, and it can be a bit difficult to explain the full capacity of Notion. Fort Worth, Mexico, Germany, Boston. Amazing. Welcome. Very cool. Such a global audience here. I love it. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with Notion as well. I know we've got a range of abilities here. Maybe some people opened up Notion and thought, oh my gosh, it's a little intimidating. It's too much. Maybe you've been using it for a couple of months, but you feel like maybe there's a couple pieces missing. I've definitely seen that before, where folks who've been using Notion for 3 months, 6 months are unaware of certain features that could make their lives a lot easier. So I'd love to hear from you kind of how you've been using it and also your specific use cases too. Because I think it can be really tricky to try and learn Notion if you don't have a reason or a purpose for using it. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the first, maybe the first reason or first thing that kind of drew you into Notion? Love Notion, barely tapped its capabilities, just starting out. It's complicated. Yes, it's incredibly powerful. You can do almost anything, which is incredibly overwhelming. So again, Notion isn't like other tools like Evernote or Asana that are fairly opinionated and have their own kind of rules. You kind of have to build your own, which can be pretty difficult. Yeah, to-do lists, great. Tables and Kanban boards, trying to teach and convert a few people. Yep. Yeah, and so the way that I use Notion is for everything. It is a sort of integrated tool for my personal life, business tasks, you name it, everything lives in there. But it's taken a while, and I think it's helpful to have a project first, a kind of thing where you get to learn Notion by putting a particular project in place, and then you can kind of build out. Amazing. Want to organize my business and life better? Yes. Visioning, goals, projects, tasks, yes. Tracking everything, yep. A lot of habit tracking, daily agenda, things like that. Content calendars, yes. And so we won't be able to cover everything in this session. I'm going to do my best, but again, because it's so complicated and you can do so much, we have lots of office hours in the past, and there's lots of amazing YouTube videos that cover really specific use cases. I know someone mentioned Zettelkasten system. We did do a Notion office hours on creating a knowledge hub that might be helpful for that session. So I'm going to do my best not to repeat things that we've maybe already covered or that might warrant a more advanced session. So we are going to focus on basics, fundamentals, getting some things organized, and then we'll build out a couple use cases. I will share whatever we create with you as well. So if you want to play with the template and kind of see what we've created, and also that way you can see what it looks like to create something and then share it with someone else to make it available to duplicate. Great. Organizing projects. Personally, life, everything. Yeah, life and business operating system. That's basically how I use Notion, which again can be intimidating because a lot of us have so many moving parts to our business and our personal lives. So we're not going to necessarily create an entire ecosystem today, but we can definitely help you wrap your head around the basics. How to combine different aspects of databases to be really useful and helpful to stay organized. Amazing. Danny has a great video there too on basic blocks, basic database properties. There's just so much to the app. It's, I mean, really that's the double-edged sword of Notion. It's just so incredibly powerful. It can take a while to kind of wrap your head around it. I would encourage you too, not to feel like you have to get it all at once. Your space will evolve over time the more that you use it and the more powerful it becomes. So the more you feed it, the more powerful it gets. Writing projects, amazing. We did have an office hours on writing a novel, which might be interesting too. So we can definitely point you to other resources based on your specific use cases. I know we've had a couple questions that have already popped in. Feel free to If you have any questions before we dig in, feel free to use the ask a question area. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on the chat, but it is helpful to find out kind of where your struggles came from so I can address them when I'm walking you through. I don't think I'm capable to create next steps in big picture thinking. That's a really great use case, Sam. And that's something that definitely was one of my first use cases within Notion too, was I needed a place to store the sort of bigger picture visioning, thinking, goal setting, but then also have a place where I can track my to-dos that support them and just creating that bridge. And I think Notion is just so powerful that way that you can really zoom in on the nitty gritty and zoom out and see the big picture as well. They don't have password protected access at the moment. You can add guests into your space. We'll go into that as well. Cool. Okay, so we've had a couple votes on, I'm interested to see a practical flow between databases and for online entrepreneurs. So how projects, tasks, and resources can be integrated with Notion with the goal of making my day more focused and more productive. So that sounds like that's a popular use case as well. Okay. A great question from Regenipreneurs. What fundamental understandings will enable me to feel confident to start really using this tool? I've messed around and set up some boards, but not really sure if they're functional enough yet to use. Yes, that's a very common use case. Welcome, Lynn. Welcome. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is start with some of the basics, kind of getting you familiar with Notion. For some of you, this might be a little bit of a review. For some of you, you might be like, oh, finally, that's how you do something. So I'll zoom into my screen. We'll dive in there a little bit. And then if it's helpful too, I'd like to show you a couple examples, maybe a business example and a personal example to show you how dashboards can work and how you can combine your pages and your databases to kind of create a workflow for you. Because again, I think that's where things start to get way more powerful. Some beginner Notion users, I noticed that their sidebars look very, very, very long, and you'll see, hundreds of different pages here, and you're having to click, and once you've clicked on a page or a page inside a page, then you're like, where am I? Where did it all go? And it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I prefer a much flatter structure, and I really love the use of dashboards so that you can see everything that you need to see related to something in one place without even having to leave or click around. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to check out the questions here just to make sure I don't miss anything. And yes, this session is recorded. You can come back to this URL anytime, or you can check it out on YouTube. Okay, so let me try out this resolution here. I want to make sure that this looks okay for you. Someone made a comment about the resolution. Can you see my screen okay? Is the resolution all right? Just give me a heads up in the chat. I don't know if I should be a little more zoomed in to make that. Looks good? Okay, great. All right, day one in Notion. So, and I'd love to hear from you. It sounds like a lot of folks are a little bit more interested in the sort of business or entrepreneur, maybe people that are balancing their business and their personal use cases. Cool. Okay. Little pixelated, but readable. Oh, yeah, I'm zoomed in. I'm hoping that I actually usually view my Notion space zoomed out to 80% because I really love being able to see so much on my dashboard. But this is zoomed in quite a bit just to make sure you can read on the screen. Okay, so a really great question I get asked a lot is where to put private tasks as well as business tasks, right? So maybe you have business tasks tasks that you're sharing with other people, but there's personal things that you don't necessarily want other folks to be able to see as well. So that's definitely something I can show you how to do. And little tasks which are not bound to bigger projects. Okay, so would it be helpful to show you a couple dashboards that exist in my space? Or do we want to start with the fundamentals first? Because I don't want to overwhelm any brand new beginner folks, but I also think it's really helpful to have a reason and a purpose for kind of what we're building toward. So I'd love to hear from you if you just want to start with some of the mechanics and the basics fundamentals, or do you want to see an example of what we're working toward first? I'm happy to adapt. Just let me know in the chat. Fundamentals. Okay, let's start with the fundamentals. From scratch. Perfect. And if you ever want to see an example of this in my space, just let me know. I've got lots of dashboards here just to kind of show you what different, again, like what a weekly agenda can look like, what a collecting and processing could look like using the getting things done. So we'll bounce back and forth a little bit. I know some people have mentioned the gardening template. I think the gardening template is just a good example of what it looks like to have a page with multiple databases inside with different views, so you can really see what's possible. So I'm going to start with some fundamentals here, and then I'm going to jump into a dashboard just to show you what that looks like. So you'll notice any Notion page pretty much has this type / for command. So the / command is your best friend. It's where you can access almost anything in Notion. If I hit /, all of my options are here, right? And you can scroll down and you'll see a number of things you can do here. There's databases you can create. I'm going to start with some basics first before we jump in. You've got media types as well. So you notice you can copy and paste videos, and they're automatically going to embed. So Notion is pretty smart that way that you can very quickly embed beautiful things in here. You're going to want to get to know the keyboard commands as well. So things like turning things into a header, command option 2, 3, 1, right? Lots of different options. So today we are covering the basics. Cool. Let's make a table. Okay. So if I type in / and start tab, I can make a table. I think when you're just learning too, that doing things inside of a page, so doing inline databases can be really helpful. Again, so you're not kind of clicking around into so many different places. So I often will use a page as my workshop, and I'll do everything that I need in this one page. And then if I decide I want to make this a sort of master element, I can always drag that and make that a top level element, right? So there's that table that I made right here, and I can drag that inside of other pages. So a lot of people aren't necessarily aware you can drag blocks, you can drag pages, you can nest things inside of other things. There's a lot that you can do here. So what kind of page should we build? I'd love your input. What would be helpful for you? Should we build a task, maybe a simple task database? And yes, as Danny said, all the shortcuts you can find in the bottom right here. And there's some great documentation there if you want to get into the nitty gritty, but I'm going to show you just some of the most the most useful ones. Okay, great. Yeah, notes. Notes is a good one, right? A lot of folks like saving and clipping notes. I know some people also mentioned wanting to import Evernote. And I'm just going to give you my 2 cents on this. I actually think it's way easier. Start with a clean slate before you even think about importing your data. That's my 2 cents on that. And we can get into why, but I think you're going to have an easier time to kind of set up the structure the way that you want it, and then you can do an import. Great. Okay, so what's the difference between a table and a list? So here's where we get into the basics of databases. So you'll notice there's a view here, and a lot of the functionality of Notion, you may not even notice until you hover over, right? So when I hover over, you can see open, open, open. That's because when you first create a table, Notion adds 3 empty blocks by default. And you'll notice if you click add a view, you've got a number of different options here for types of views. So there's a list view here. So if I click list, I'm just going to call this a list, you'll see the same thing shows up in a slightly different way, right? Let's make another view. Let's make a board view. And you can see the look and feel. It looks a little bit different, but the data is exactly the same. Let's add a calendar view. Cool. Okay, so we have a notes database. Let's do the same thing, and we're going to create a table for our tasks. All right, so I'm just doing / command, and you can do board, you can do table, and if you just start typing right after the / your options are going to appear. Great. Table shows columns, list does not. Yeah, and there's also, again, we can get into the nuances of this, but let's say you've got a reading list here. Let's make that a checkbox to say, like, did I read this item? Assuming this would be a reading list or something like that. I guess with notes, it wouldn't be. Maybe. Okay, we'll leave that one for now. Tasks. Okay, so let's say new thing to do today. Great. I can either open this up, I can add properties here. So We could say complete, doing, needs review, right? So this is a status property. And you'll notice that the 3 dots on the right-hand side of your databases are going to open up these properties to you. So you can click on properties here and you can decide, maybe I just want to see the name. Maybe I don't want to see these other properties. So whenever you see those 3 dots, you can see them here when you hover over here. You can see them in the top right-hand side of your page. So one thing I usually do when I'm creating a page is I go full width. And that way, if I open up my page, yeah, can you see okay? I mean, it's not perfect, the pixelation, but can you see? Let me know if you can see the screen okay. I know it's not perfect. Wow, we have a ton of questions that just came in. Practical flow of databases, yes, yes, yes. Not sure. Okay, cool. You guys can see it okay. Okay, a bunch of questions will come in and we'll come back to those. Okay. So with tasks, let's add a done property checkbox just to show you what this looks like. Right? So anytime you want to add a new property to your entries, you can click on add property. You have a number of different property type options. Dates, multi-select, person. There's a lot of sort of pre-made options for you, select and multi-select. So I'm going to turn these tags into a single select. You can always change, if you change your mind, you can always change it up. So if I turn that into a single select, then when I create a board view, right, complete, doing, and I can drag these around. I can also change the width of them. Maybe I don't want them to be as large. Small, large, right? So those three dots are your friend. That's where your properties for almost anything are going to appear. Your sorting options, filtering options, great. Okay. Just keeping an eye on the chat. Great. Video, yeah, video bitrate takes, it's not super sharp. Okay, let me see if I can adjust. See if I can adjust this to make this a little more high res. Bear with me a moment. Is that any better? I'm not sure if that actually changed anything. If anyone has a tip for how to improve that, I'm up. Let me know. Otherwise, we'll just have to work with this. Okay, I'm going to work with this. I know it's not exactly pixel perfect crisp. Okay, so priorities. What's urgent and what's important? Yes, let's add a priority to our task. This thing is really important. Great. And so this is our status. Let's say status in progress. View. And then let's add an, either priority or urgency. Let's make that also a single select. So you can say urgent, not urgent, right? And if you're using like the Eisenhower matrix too, you can say, you want to say importance, important, not important. I mean, ideally, you wouldn't be putting something on your list if it's not important. So I'm going to delete that one. But you kind of get the idea here. So what we can do is view this board by priority. And so as long as you have a person property, select or multi-select, you can group this board in a few different ways. So maybe I just want to group it by priority. I just want to see what's urgent and what's not urgent. And I can say that's urgent, very important. Great. Right. And I can drag those around. If I drag this here, that status automatically changes. And if I add filters here as well, so maybe show me everything that's urgent but not complete, those are going to get inherited as well. Great. Change not important and change urgent. Yeah, so I mean, I can show you what mine looks like, but I have a matrix that kind of helps me kind of combine urgency, importance, delegate, etc. Okay, I noticed a couple questions coming in. Okay, so hopefully we can build out a workflow, but I know it's a little bit tricky to, we may not be able to get a fully functioning, super awesome system right in this one session while we're kind of teaching, but I just want to make sure you have a grasp on the fundamentals. So again, you'll notice we have 2 inline databases in here, but let's, I want to show you what it looks like to actually re-embed the same database. So let's say I want to see this urgence, you know, what's most important here, but every single block in Notion can be copied. It has its own unique link. So, and again, if you hover over, you'll notice these 6 dots on the left-hand side. I'm clicking on that, I'm saying copy link, and I can paste that anywhere. So I'm just going to paste it below here and click create linked database. And now I can view the exact same data here, but maybe I want to view this on a calendar. All right, so maybe you just want to like get a sense of where all your tasks are. Now you'll notice there's nothing on the calendar right now because these don't actually have a date property yet. So if I click on no date, I can see all of these dates that haven't been given a date. So I can either view them or click on them to add them to the calendar. So I'm going to add these. And by default, they'll add them to today. And now I can say, okay, now that's on the 30th, that's here. And if I open this up, this now has a date property. So I can either add the property here or I can add it through the view. And let's say I also want to see more detail about, I want to see what the priority of those things are, right? And the status. Maybe any tags, is it done, not done, right? So you can choose what, you always get to choose kind of how much is visible at the table level, at the calendar level, at the board level. You can always choose what you want to see. And I think that's the beauty is, I know a lot of folks mentioning, like, you know, that huge list of tasks of everything that you've got on the go. But the beauty is once you start to filter those things and say, I just want to see my work tasks, or I just want to see my chores, you know, personal tasks, you get to choose that. And it really can help you reduce that overwhelm. I'm just going to check the, yes, dragging in the calendar instead of entering manually. Awesome. So I use the copy link all the time. And I'll share with you a trick that I know a lot of people have been frustrated with if you've ever worked with inline databases. Calendar. Let me just spell that correctly because that's gonna. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back to the table view. And so just to show you, we now have tasks, the original, and now we have tasks, which is it's like a mirrored instance, right? So if I add something here, new thing here, you can see it's automatically adding here, right? So those are mirror instances of the same database. But let's say I want to have another view. We've got our board view, we've got our table view. What I can do is if I duplicate this, and just remember that if there's an arrow beside it, that means it's an instance of the database. The original doesn't have that little arrow beside it. So you'll notice if I just paste the link to this, it's not going to retain the board view here. But if I duplicate this one here, just hit duplicate, it will retain whatever views you have here. Table view and calendar, table view and calendar. So I'm not sure if that makes sense. You might have to play with it a little bit, but essentially, sometimes people will put all of their favorite views on the original board, and then they notice when they try and paste the link that they have to recreate all of those views again. So views are only retained on an instance of a database, not in the original. It's like one of those annoying instances that I've mentioned to the team. Can we have different tables in a same calendar? And Claudia, can you clarify that? Can you have different tables in the same calendar? No, okay, I think I know what you mean. This is one limitation of Notion. And this is why I recommend having what I call a master task database. So that is one database that all of your tasks live inside for that very reason. Otherwise, you're going to be duplicating up on things. So yes, every single database has a calendar view. There isn't a way currently to have one calendar that shows all of your dates across all of your things. This is another reason why I create work like dashboards that have personal tasks, client tasks, anything that I need to see inside of one page so I don't have to click around. Yeah. Yeah. I know, Gail, it's exasperating. Can you cross-reference to different databases? Yes, you absolutely can. So let's say this new note here, I want to relate this to a task, right? So there's a property, relational databases. We have done a office hours on this as well. There's plenty of videos out there, but relational database properties are probably one of my all-time favorite things. And I know I'm working in my own space, so I might have a lot of different, hopefully I can easily, let me, here's a tip, add an emoji to your, add an emoji to your board so you can find them easily. There we go. Okay, and my notes, let's call it fancy notes, just so I can connect these two easily, because I have a lot of templates in my space. So when I'm calling that up, it's looking for all of those. Okay, so what I want to do is create a relation to that notes database. Notes. I think I called it fancy notes, didn't I? There we go. Fancy notes. Great. So now my notes and my tasks are connected. So let's say this really important thing that's here, that's related to this note here. I can click on that. That now has them connected. And you'll see here, I'm just going to delete this one because I'm not using it. And that's another thing you can do. You can click and drag. You can shorten columns. You can hide columns. Maybe I don't want to see this in the table view. I only want to see that in the board view. Let's hide that. Hide that. Great. So maybe I just want this really simplified view of the tasks up here, and then I can view it in different ways here, right? So in the same page, I can view the exact same information in multiple ways. And I can also turn on the properties here. So here we go, no date. I'm just going to add that here. I can turn on the properties on the calendar so that I can see any that have notes as well. There you go. I can see this one is connected to new note. One thing I also like to do is say small text. So you have some settings there. You can change your font and your text size and things like that. Again, I typically view my page zoomed out to 80%. So for me, the text and the dashboards are a lot smaller, but I just want to make sure you can read this on my screen. Great. Yes, use different emojis for different databases. Can't wait to see how you make a dashboard of master task list. Subtasks. So it depends, Peter. One thing I usually recommend is to have projects, and then projects are connected to your tasks. How can you make a checkbox like a trigger to mark a tag like done? Okay, so you can't do that through the native properties. You can do some formulas so that when you mark something as done, you'll have a little message, but we're not going to get into formulas today. That's definitely another level. And we do have another session on that. Yeah, I can switch to the light theme if I don't know if people have a preference for that. Is that any better in terms of readability? But yeah, you've got options. You can show light or dark mode, whatever is helpful. Okay, so when you created the relation between the note and the table, was the notes column added? Yes. Yep. So as soon as you create a relation, that relation goes both ways. And what I'll do is I'm going to put this back to our default view here. I'm going to delete any of these properties that I'm not actually using. Let's delete that. Great. Let's delete that. Right, and you can see that's been created here. This thing's really important, and I'll often rename that and just say tasks. right? So related tasks. So that's a two-way connection. Can you convert a table full page into a table inline? Yes, you can. So if I drag, let's just do it with the notes here. So if I drag that database into the sidebar here and I go to fancy notes, this is a database, right? It's a full page database. And you'll notice I can't add anything to this page. I can't click my mouse. There's nothing else. So when you create a new page in Notion and it asks you, do you want to create basically a blank page or a database? You can only have a database or a page. If you choose a database, then there's nothing else you can have on that page except that database. If you choose a page, you can have as many databases as you want in there. And so this fancy notes is a full, it's a database on its own. So you were asking, can you then move that into a page? Absolutely. So now I can just drag that back into this page, and now it's an inline database. You can also turn this into a page if you want to. So now I can click into, again, fancy notes, and this is a database, so I can't click on anything. I can't do anything with it other than add data to it. If I go back to this bookmark here, I can turn that back into an inline database. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you move and manipulate things. I know some people get nervous, like, oh, I messed it up, I have to start from scratch. But you really can manipulate your data, move it around, change your mind. I can move notes into tasks if I want to. Like you can really move things around from database to database. Great. Yes, there is an undo. Yes, I blew somebody's mind with that before. They had no idea that they could undo the mistake that they had just made. So if you change something in a table and hate it, is there something that can undo? And Karen, can you clarify, are you talking about like adding a property, or like maybe you've added a, you can roll back any, you've got an undo here, you've got a page history, so you can definitely roll back a few instances. Are there instances where doing a database as a page versus inline is better or worse? Yeah, so I mean, I have my own opinions in terms of workflow and whatnot, but like if this is in its own page, I only have one context that I'm looking at, which is not necessarily helpful. So I'll give you an example. I'm gonna jump into an example. So some of you might have seen my garden dashboard. Again, this is going to be a little zoomed out or zoomed in, so it's going to look a little bit funny in terms of these headers. This is probably a little closer to how it would look. But so there's lots of stuff in here that I want to see at one time. I don't want to be clicking around. I don't want to go to my tasks in a separate place. Everything that I need is inside here. And I've also done a little bit of a like table of contents here. You can also do an automated table of contents by hitting the / command and type TOC, table of contents. And if I click that, that's automatically created from all of the headers below. But that takes up a lot of space. So what I do is just put text, so gardening journal, and you can copy a link to any header. And then I can just highlight that and I can link it. I usually use the shortcuts, but yeah, I can link that. Obviously, I'm just linking here, so it's not doing that much, but this allows me to link lower on the page like this, if that makes sense. So I like being able to see everything that I need in one page. A business example of that is focus. So I want to see all my recurring tasks. I want to see this week's most important stuff. I want to be able to very rapidly delegate something to my assistant. I want to see what actions are tomorrow. Again, this is going to look a little funny on your screen compared to how I usually view it, but you kind of get the idea. Another example of this is collecting and processing. So if you follow getting things done, when you're storing and clipping things using that Notion clipper, I will often clip things to an inbox, and then this is like an unprocessed thing. all I have here is the URL and the created date. And then I decide what I want to do with this article. Usually I want to go through and summarize it, add tags to it, whatever. So I can drag this between one database and another. And I can open this up. Now I have all of these properties here. And I can go through, I can tag it and say racism, anti-racism, right? So I can connect this to my own task database, to projects. So if you're saving things that you know are connected to specific projects that you're doing, I can do all of this processing right in this page without having to leave. I can also do a brain dump and be like, okay, there's just all the things that are stuck in my head. This is my place to do all of that processing. Even if it's like a messy note that I don't know where it lives yet, I can just dump it here, do that thing. And I can do my processing here. And what will happen is as soon as I add any tags, an author, and a summary, that will disappear from here because of these filters. So this is the place where I do my processing. And great, so now some new actions might appear, right? So I'm like, oh, I want to watch that workshop, or, I want to get back to that person. I want to summarize that article, or make a new video that's related to something that I've learned here. Then I can add actions here. Is it today, tomorrow, next? I can also do that by size or impact. Essential, deep work, small win, daily grind. Anything that I add to daily grind shows up on my virtual assistant's dashboard, because she has a filtered view of the task database that says, show me anything assigned to me or anything that is tagged with daily grind. And that really gives us some options for just, again, rapidly doing this. I don't have to go into my tasks. I don't even have to leave this place. This becomes a workflow when I'm in collecting and processing mode. And then I can go through, add any tasks. I can also maybe someday projects have come out of that, or I have some new ideas. I can rapidly add these all within this page. So this is an example of a dashboard where, again, it's just for collecting and processing, but then I also have my focus dashboard where I can zero in on like what needs to get done today and this week. Just going to keep an eye on the chat here. So let me know if you have questions about that. Yeah, so I know Julia mentioned like struggling to find the right system for my needs. It's tricky, right? Because with Notion, you can do anything, but you almost have to have a sense of a system, or some workflow experience, or whether you've read Getting Things Done or Deep Work or whatever. It requires you to do a lot of kind of engineering to figure out the best way to do it for your needs. And that's why I think it's also really helpful to just, like Danny's got videos, August has amazing videos. You're going to see a lot of different people's workspaces that look really different. And it's really important not to just feel like, oh, well, Marie said you had to do it this way, so you got to do it this way. You really want to make it yours. And admittedly, too, when I first used Notion, I think I used it for a month and was like, I just don't really see what's possible. And I think it was a year before I picked it back up again. So it took a while for it to click in terms of what's possible. Yeah, I've been watching it, but something not clicking this weekend. Cool. Did you add a custom emoji like the Notion icon? Yeah, so you can definitely add custom emojis here. If we click on this, you can upload images. You can link to an image file. So you can do whatever you need there. So the main dashboards that I spend the most time on would be visioning and planning, collecting, processing, and focus. There's also Learn and Grow, which is really great, especially I know some of you mentioned like the Knowledge Hub and Zettelkasten and that sort of thing. This can be really powerful to, again, pull in the same database in the same page, but show it in different ways. So this one is just showing me everything that is a type of online course, and the status is in progress. And I can scroll down and I can see active reading. I can see courses that I want to come back to. Right, and I can open this up and I can see all of the properties that I've given it. I can see people that it's been tagged with, and I can even, jump in. Let's check out Tiago Forte's profile. I can see everything that he's been tagged with, his URL. I can see everything that I've clipped to my Knowledge Hub that Tiago has published. I've got a roll-up that pulls in additional tags as well. Content Hub, any content that I've created that relates to Tiago. how much I've spent on Tiago's courses, right? So all of that beautiful information is here, which then allows me to show this in different ways. I could show a table view of all of my Knowledge Hub, but just show me a summary of how much I've spent, right? So the more that you feed the system, the more that you start to have a lot of interesting data to work with. Can we clip right into the inline database of the inbox? Yes. Yep. You can clip into anywhere. You can clip into an entry in a database, or you can even clip inside an entry that's already in the database in the body. So you can kind of nest things if you want. There's a lot that you can do. Hassani asked, are the templates available for us to copy from your data? So not exactly. And I get a lot of people asking like, oh, where can I find your like Marie HQ? But the tricky thing is it's all based on my projects, my tasks, my databases. Like there's so much information in there that I've pulled. A lot of this Knowledge Hub is courses that I've paid for. So there's notes in there relating to those courses too. So it's not exactly, even here, if any of you use like iPad or Remarkable or whatever, I'll put my handwritten notes in there as well. There's a lot that you can do. I know some folks asked about tracking your studies and things like that too. So I do all of that inside the Knowledge Hub. So it's not exactly super easy to share, but I do share a lot of these templates in my course, Notion Mastery, where we go in a lot more detail. But for this particular session, in my experience, sharing these really advanced templates with someone who's just beginning causes a lot of confusion. And then people end up feeling, they say like, oh, I feel really stupid. I don't know how to work with this. And it's not your fault. It's just Notion is so powerful. And I've done a lot of that legwork to connect all of these pieces. And so if you don't have a really strong grasp on the fundamentals, it's going to feel really intense and confusing. Yeah, I think Gail in the landing page on like module 1 of my course, I have a little mind exploding emoji that's like, let's talk about overwhelm for a minute. Venzi, great question. How long did it take to set all this up? And did you set it up once and update it periodically? It looks like a lot of work. Yeah, it took a while for it to, I'd say it took about 6 to 8 months to get the setup that I was like, yeah, this is totally working the way I want. It was close, after like 3 months and just kind of tinkering here and there, but it's not like I sat down and like did this as a full-time job. I would just kind of tinker and I would do it piece by piece. So one of the first things that I felt like I mastered in Notion that I have consistently stuck to is a daily journal and a weekly agenda. And once I had that, the rest you could kind of build on. But I think having something specific to start with, whether it's like a place to track my schooling, get that first before you worry about kind of having this perfectly integrated system. What the hell is inline? Inline is literally like inside the page. So this is this is a database that lives inside the page versus if I click on the Knowledge Hub, then I'm actually inside the database itself. But if I want this database to live inside a page, that's going to be an inline database. Hopefully that makes sense. Can you add PDFs, PowerPoint, Excel docs? You can embed almost any format inside of Notion. So I have lots of PDFs that are embedded. Google Docs, for sure, you can definitely do that. What are the various ways of connecting and linking things in Notion? Okay, great question. Because you've probably seen there's a lot of relational databases or relations happening here, right? Anytime you see an arrow here, that means that these entries are connected to another database. So here's an example, masterclass on gardening. That's tagged with gardening. And so I can jump into that tag as well, into gardening, and then I can see other people that have things related to gardening. This one's not as vibrant, so I can click out of there. Let's look at one that might have more. And another thing you can do is you can mention content that lives anywhere else. So like if I type in garden, right, I can actually link to my garden page right there in line, right inside the text. And you can do that anywhere. You can do that in the body. So if I go down here, I can just mention. I can mention people. I can mention pages. Maybe I want to link to my garden journal, right? So this allows you to kind of rapidly move very quickly I do this with my meetings database as well. I can link to a specific person that I'm meeting with. And then, of course, you have your database relations. So the Knowledge Hub itself, if I add a new entry, new online course. Let's say I'm taking a new course. Great. And this is already filtered to online course because of the filters that I have here. Right. I'm just showing everything that has online courses. I could show everything here. There's a lot of stuff in the Knowledge Hub. But so let's say I just to show you what the relations look like. These relations have already been created here, right? I have a people database. I have a tags database, journal, notes and ideas that relate to the course, words and wisdom. Maybe there's like impressive quotes and things like that. We go into a lot more detail in, we did an office hours called Building a Knowledge Hub. So that might be helpful for anyone that wants to go into a little bit more detail here. But I can choose to connect or not. So I don't always, add all of these properties to every database every time. Usually I'll put who's the creator of the course, right? And I can add, right? I can add stuff in there. I can connect it to my journal. And then you can also have a number of templates here. So we haven't even dived too much into templates, but templates are magical. If we go back to day 1 in Notion, let's say there's a type of task that you do over and over again. And let's say it's for a specific client. So let's make a table of clients. Client A, client B, and client C. Okay, great. So maybe this task here is connected to client A. I'm going to go to my property type, create a relation. Hopefully I'll be able to, there we go, clients day 1 in Notion. Great. Oh, client. So let's say this task is connected to this client A, right? I don't have to put those details in for every single client. Sometimes it's helpful. So somebody asked, what if I just want to put tasks that aren't connected to anything else? You can totally do that. You can add as many tasks as you want. You don't have to add all of those properties. But if you're doing something like a board view, you'll notice that that won't show up under here until you assign it those properties, if that makes sense. I did this recently and created a separate invoice database. How would you link the two databases? Are they, Jen, are they the same database, like 2 invoice databases? Because then I would actually merge the data and I would either move all of the entries from one database into the other. And I use this feature a lot. I know a lot of folks don't necessarily know about it, but you can highlight multiple entries at once. So let's say I want to highlight all of these. I can move these anywhere. I can move them into a page. I can move them into a database. I can move them into a different workspace if I want. So if you want to move this somewhere into a different page that lives outside of this particular page, you can move your data around with one click. Move to. You'll notice the Command Shift P. So I use that a lot. That's so hard to answer, Korean. Like some people, it clicks right away. And I think it might depend too what software you're already familiar with. And for others, it takes a lot longer to kind of wrap your head around. It really depends. Can you put the database on another URL on your own website? You can do custom URLs with Notion, but those URLs have to be public. If you're okay with that, you can do that. We did do a session on that as well. So we can definitely do a follow-up where we share links with anything that we mentioned today. I know we mentioned a bunch of them, and we can't cover everything today because there's just so much to cover, but we'll definitely follow up with some if you want to go deeper on specific use cases. Okay, so templates. We didn't actually talk about this, but let's say you have, tasks for client C or whatever, a particular kind of project, right? So rather than add those properties every single time, let's create a template. And let's say, I do this for my client. So if I have a client that, almost every day I have tasks to do, I have a template for them. And what we want to do is associate that with client C. And you could give it any default property, like maybe you want to associate a certain emoji with that client as well. So now I have a couple options. I can say, let's go to the default view here. I can either add a new task here, or I can add one here. I can say, click on this arrow, and I just want to do a new client C task. And you'll notice the client's already selected, right? And in your case too, if you have a certain client with certain things that you do over and over and over again, put those in the body. So here's another example, like webinar, right? So maybe for every single webinar, there is like set up the landing page, share the link, prep notes, right? So that's a template. And you can see here, you're editing a template in tasks. If you don't see that yellow, it means you've created a new entry, not edited your template. I know sometimes people, when they want to edit the template, they click on it here, but what they're doing is just creating a new task. You need to click on edit this template. Those 3 magical dots are your friend. Edit, right? So you can change your mind. List of client tasks. Great. And so if I also create a new task here, new task, but then I decide I want to apply those properties, I can do it here. I can say, oh yeah, that's a webinar here. And those appear. So this is where once you start to learn how to use templates, you can then embed databases inside of your templates. So for a project, let's make a project table. My typos today. Big project. Okay. So this project has a lot of different tasks. And here, like, this is an example, like I have a lot of clients that run crowdcast events, right? So there's always the same type of task that you need to do over and over again. I would probably make a template for that. So let's say like a webinar project. And what I would do is I'm going to copy the link, just like I showed you before. I'm going to copy this link to the tasks, and I'm going to paste them inside of this template. And then what I'm going to do is create a relation between the projects and the tasks. So many task templates. I might have to do this the other way around. Oh, I might have to create that relation first. Okay, let's do it from, let's call it project A, just because I have so many templates in my space. Let's create a connection between my tasks and my project. Okay, so those are connected. So let's say I connect this to my big project. Right, so those two are connected now. So now I'm going to update these tasks. So this way, anytime I create a new webinar project, I want the tasks to be filtered to be connected to this project. So I'm going to add a filter. And I only want this to be connected to webinar project. And then let's say, again, we have those set up the page, do this other thing. Let's say you have like a batch of 10 tasks that every single time you do this project, you can't add them to the database because the project hasn't been created yet. So let's create a new webinar project. New webinar project. New webinar, yay. If you go here, you'll see project contains new webinar, yay. So these tasks have automatically inherited whatever I've named this new project. These tasks are connected. And so let's say I want to assign these two things to that project. So now when I go here, you can see that those things are connected to that project. So I know that it might feel a little bit weird if you haven't like wrapped your head around it, how this can be useful, but this is how you can begin to do start to automate things in batches. When you've got project types, you want certain properties to automatically be assigned. The templates are honestly so powerful. Cool, I'm just checking the chat here. And I'm happy to, what I'm gonna try and do is, we'll do this for the hour. I'm happy to stay on later to answer some of the additional questions as well, because I know there's a lot and we can't necessarily cover it all. And like 34 questions have just popped in. So I'm just gonna take a break from the build. I'm gonna go over to the question area and hopefully I can clarify some of this stuff. And just want to reiterate, it is such a powerful tool. And I know a lot of people end up feeling kind of foolish or silly, like, oh, why don't I get this? Like, it hasn't clicked yet. What I've noticed is most people have a moment. It's frustration for a bit. And there's a moment where it clicks and you're like, okay, I see what's possible. And you can start to build whatever you need. But it does take a little bit of time. So, please be patient with yourself. That it does. For me, I believe the time it takes to learn the basics and to really get comfortable with the fundamentals is so worth it for the long term, because now it takes me minutes to do what I need to do, fill out my daily journal. Everything's connected automatically. So anytime I add something new, everything is just gloriously integrated and there isn't there isn't a lot of maintenance involved. So it is definitely a lot of upfront commitment, but I believe it's worth it. So cool. And Danny, thank you so much for answering so many great questions in the chat. Danny's going to be coming on for future office hours too, so I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, practical flow between databases for online entrepreneurs, how projects, tasks, or resources can be integrated in Notion with the goal of making my day focused and more productive. I know we've touched on that a little bit with the sort of focus dashboards and also visioning and planning. So again, this is when I need to focus and I need to know what is happening today. I come to my focus dashboard, and you'll notice again, the same database is embedded over and over again, just in different ways. I can change my mind. I can move things around. And so at the end of the day, what I do is I go down to this week's actions, which kind of has everything: today, tomorrow, next, later. And I can be like, oh, right, that's actually tomorrow. Right. And I can reorganize, drag things around. And then inside my weekly agenda, I have a version of this. So I kind of always know what needs to happen. It's the task database doesn't ever change, right? It's like I can just show it in different ways. I can see what's on deck. I can see what's due today. I can see what's overdue. I've created a lot of different views to give me some flexibility to make sure that I know what needs to be prioritized today. Let me show you what my weekly template looks like. So this is like a blank weekly template. So I've got a calendar which shows my by day of the week. Will show all my meetings will appear here. Recurring. I like to separate out my recurring events this way because I see them by day of the week, and just visually that's helpful for me. There's so many different ways to do that too. I know Danny has a video on that as well. So many different ways you can do this. Journal for the week, and then here's my priorities. So I like to see it kind of at the weekly view: today, tomorrow, next. It's just kind of, what's on deck. And I can also see this by today would be nice. I can see subtasks. I can see overdue, right? Anything that has an overdue here. But this week is generally how I view it when I'm in the weekly mode. Regarding tasks, I'm confused how the tasks and projects relate. I don't want to end up with just a long list of tasks. So I have this filtered out. Only show me anything that is incomplete and is not recurring and is assigned to me. But I don't need to see all my next, someday, maybe. Like today, tomorrow, next is like what's kind of within maybe a week or so. Anything else is in later. And I don't need to see that. So I actually don't see it here. I only see kind of what is on deck here.
And I'll give you sometimes you never know like what's all showing here. So again, you won't be able to see this unless I'm kind of zoomed out a little bit. I don't know if you can see this super crisply, but for example, I've got my goals up here. I can see monthly planning, right? I can see all the things that they're connected to and my progress. I can see my project planning with outcomes and next actions as well. So I can either view something at the project level, I can view it at a goal level, I can view it on a calendar, I can see my task overview like this. And you can even hide that. So like I can just be like, no, don't need to see that. I just want to see what's on deck, right? So as part of your workflow, you want to have like a daily and weekly routine where you're sort of reorganizing, clearing things out, what needs to be upgraded to today. This is a process that I would do certainly at the end of each week, where I say, and certainly every day, at the end of the day, anything that is marked tomorrow, I'll be like, okay, that's now today. Okay, I need to do this today. Great. Nah, that's not as important. I can do that next. And you can move that around so that when you're in your view in the current day or week, this is hidden, this is hidden. You only see what you've told you want to see. So it does take a little bit of filtering, building, making sure that you're hiding the things that you don't need to see. So I could say, only show me things that are given a due date of today, right? It's totally up to you what you want it to look like. How do you do the overdue column? Can you relate that to a date? And is the actual week shown automatically, or do you have to type in the actual date? Good question. And again, every Notion Pro is going to have a very different perspective on this. I often don't give things dates unless they really need a date. And so you'll see these are overdue. And so I have a little formula that shows me like, hey, you said that this was important. Why haven't you done this yet? But generally speaking, I'm not very calendar oriented with my tasks. I'll often have these things that I want to do and they're important, but it doesn't have to happen this week. So I try to only give things dates if they are actually, if it is actually essential. So let's go to overdue. You'll see here, I have a filter. Date is before today, right? So that's only going to show anything that actually has a date property that is before today. And I would probably filter out the recurring stuff as well. I don't actually need to see my status is not recurring. And once you do, like sometimes it can feel annoying to set up those filters, but once you've set up the filters once, you don't have to set them up again and it's super easy. So yeah, I can see all of the things that are overdue here. But again, I don't want to see everything, right? I could just see like today. Let's see what I had for today would be nice. I don't know if haven't used this in a while, and I've updated some of my properties. So I think it was anything that was not done and had a day is today, right? So like there's a couple different views, and this is by energy level. So like I don't have to see all the other tasks that are like someday maybe or next or whatever. I can filter those out so that I'm only seeing at a glance what is on deck. I hope that makes sense. It's such personal preference, but I do think it's essential to minimize the work you have in progress. And sometimes I think we add things to our list because we don't really know what we have on our plate. And so it does take a bit of refinement to really get your setup feeling like it makes sense for what you want. Yeah, I definitely won't get into formulas today. I know my setup is a lot more advanced. Someone asked Peter about the master tag database. I use it heavily. Yes. I definitely recommend everyone should use a master tag database. I've shared that with Notion too, and I am curious if they're going to kind of build that functionality in. I think I've shown you most of these. Yeah, Learn and Grow, Content Hub. I will say, for those of you that are asking about like the task management piece, I do think that it's one of the most complex, but once you get it, it is a life changer. But it will take you a bit of time to figure out like what properties are going to make the most sense for you. I'd love to see how you work the weekly agenda, duplicate and archive the previous week. Great. Okay, so I'm going to address that from Bridget, a bit of the weekly agenda. Angela, for me personally, the Content Hub is content I'm creating as a content creator. So videos I'm creating, blog posts I'm writing, emails that I'm writing, and Knowledge Hub is content I'm consuming. That's kind of how I think of it, as creating versus consuming. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the weekly agenda honestly is where I spend the majority of my time. I think we've gone into this a little bit in a past office hours, but I can go over it a little bit here. And that's a little tricky. I'm like, oh, I don't know how much is visible there, but let's say I want to create a new week. This is basically what my weekly agenda looks like. So let's create a new entry for next week. All right, so that's June 29th to July 5th. And I usually favorite it right away. And I scroll down to the bottom and I have a week template. So I click that template, ta-da, everything that I need is here. And then I can open this as a page. All right, so this is what it looks like. And for each month, I choose a different emoji and a different photo at the top. And you'll notice there's a lot here. Again, we haven't gone into in a ton of detail in this session, relations and rollups. We did a whole office hours on that. I definitely recommend checking that out. But essentially, I go in and I choose like, what is my project focus this month? Right. There's a couple things in here, garden cleanup, right? I can pull those in because that connection is already created. I already know it's connected to June. I might also have to add July because this is a crossover. I might even remove June because there's only a couple days in June. Okay, and I scroll down to the bottom. I have a place to add quick notes. I have a place for my ideas. So my notes and ideas database is embedded here again. And this is filtered to today. So if I add a new note here, it's going to appear anywhere else that my notes and ideas database lives. Calendar. So any meetings that I have this week. So let's say I have every week, I have an accelerator call. And I can just click accelerator because that's the template for that. And I know that that's automatically connected to Mariah Cause. It's connected to this day of the week. So again, any properties that you kind of have over and over again, I've got calendar templates, right, for like types of calls that I have. And those might have different pieces of information in the body. So here's an example of like our team meeting. If I open this up, there's our weekly agenda, right? So each of these can have its own look, its own template. I've got my recurring actions here because those are never checked off. There's things that happen every week. And then for my journal entry for this week, you'll notice this is automatically filtered to this week, right? So at the template level, the journal and the calendar are automatically connected to the current week. So every time I create a new weekly agenda, these nested things inside are automatically kind of inheriting that parent property. So they're automatically kind of connected, if that makes sense. So let me show you what it looks like to add June 29th, Monday. Okay, if I open this up, all these properties here from my daily agenda. And I have a Monday template because there's like certain things that I do on Monday and I want the pretty image to show up here. Right, so there's Monday. I have a cover image and I have an image of the day. So after I finish the day, I go through, I replace this image with a photo of the day. And then I've got my actions database too that is filtered to show journal contains June 20. So there's a lot of like child-parent relationships happening just to show you what's possible. I know this is it's not the fundamentals, but some folks were asking about it. And then what happened today? So this is a place to kind of free-form journal. I can, put whatever I want in here. Any notes and ideas that popped up throughout the day, and then an end-of-day activity. So I will go through on Sunday, and I will add an entry for every day. Go through, click Tuesday. Same thing with Wednesday. So I go through, and the other thing I do is I put what is the most important task that needs to get done that day. By default, I have the recurring task that needs to happen that day, but I will go through and I can either create the task here, or in my task database, I can assign it to this day. So do this thing, I can either add it to my actions or pull in something I've already put into my database. I can say, okay, I know that that one's important, that needs to get done today. So I can kind of choose, generally speaking, I try to give myself one most important thing every day to do. And I do have a video on this as well on YouTube. I go into a lot more detail. I think the weekly agenda is probably the video that has the most views and questions, which I didn't really expect, but that's cool. Because again, this has become foundational to my habits and to keeping on top of things. So again, I do that for every day of the week. And then at the end of the week, I have a review view that will show the picture of the day instead. And what I can do is also show like my effectiveness, my energy, my entertainment, what did I view that week? And then I've always got this weekly priorities. And again, there's like lots of stuff here that is maybe not going to get done this week. So I could always hide that if I want, or I could filter this out. I could do this by impact. Right. So Karen was asking about how do you make sure you don't only see a giant list of things. So again, you can filter this to say only things from the past week, or only things that have been assigned a date or whatever. It's totally up to you. But I typically will either view it by this week or by impact. And then we have my client tasks are in here. That's a whole other session. But if I open this up, I can actually see all of my other clients' tasks and stuff show up here in my agenda. So I don't even need to leave this one page to handle my tasks, my notes, whatever. Like that's why I really favorite these weekly agendas, because I just bring in everything that I need that I do on the regular. I build it into this template. So as an example, at the end of the week, I can actually see there's personal stuff in there, but those will need to be updated. But so that's where I actually only show the weekly agenda again, but I only show the highs, good, happy moments, and hide all the other properties. I could do a mind sweep here using David Allen's incompletion triggers. So there's a lot of nested stuff in here, but what it does is it allows me to, again, get everything I need to get done right here. And these little prompts that are like, okay, make sure there's at least one next action for each project. Okay, great. What are the next actions here? Check off any completed items so I can go through and be like, oh yeah, I did that. And you get into the habit of cleaning things up as you go. Any new wonderful creative ideas that came up. And again, this one is filtered, created within the last month. I could also do that for the last week if I wanted to. And goals, right? So I pull in my goals database right here, and the outcomes are right here, and I can update that status, and I can see the progress. So I don't need to click around. Like I can just go to the goals if I want to, but this allows me to kind of have that snapshot view. And doing this weekly review, I swear it's a life-changing habit. And then my Knowledge Hub, update and summarize any learnings. That all happens here. So that to me is the power of the weekly agenda. Is the reflect and review section, how do you get the font to be 2 different sizes? It's just, honestly, this is just bold, all caps, and it just looks bigger, but it's not actually bigger. Cool. So I hope that starts to clarify a little bit. Again, I know we've touched on like basic stuff, but then we also, yeah, some day one. Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because it's that you need to see what you're working toward, and then you also need to understand the fundamentals to understand how to build. So my recommendation would be to set up a sandbox. Again, this is kind of like a sandbox page while you're playing to understand like what are the components of what you need. And I can share this with you, but I'm going to make a list of what I think most spaces can benefit from: projects, tasks. I call it Knowledge Hub. You might also call it like resources. Not everyone does their task management inside of Notion either. So some people use Todoist. You can also embed Todoist inside of your space. Yes, Tony, I won't go too much into it in this session because we're already kind of past time, but that weekly agenda rolls up all the properties from the journal into the top. So at the end of the week, I have this like snapshot of what the week looks like. My master list has about 80 properties. Well, so also I don't manually add those properties in my task databases as well. That's why I use those task templates and those board views. So there's a lot that can happen in a more automated way. Yes, you can embed Todoist. You can totally do that. It's pretty awesome. So that might be a nice bridge for some of you that already manage your tasks elsewhere and kind of want to. The master task list would be awesome to look at. Yeah, I mean, you saw my master task list here, right? Like this is an example of my task properties. And I have a number of templates here. So like here's, 2 clients that when I click that, it's automatically going to be associated with her project, with her as the client. Often I will default properties to today and essential. Pomodoro, if anybody does Pomodoro, you can also add those as well, right? I connected it to my journal, content and ideas. So I don't always fill out all of these properties by any means. They're just there to help me filter it in other views if I want to. Like show me everything that's got like one Pomodoro. That's super easy. Yeah, okay. I think we did look at the master tag database. These are all my resource related databases. We've touched on some of these. Notes and ideas, I think, is a great one. Like everyone's going to have notes that they're taking, whether it's about courses that they're taking. And I can jump in here and you can see I've got like pursue me, create content, archive, reference. There's lots of different ways you can use those databases. And you've probably seen that embedded in my weekly agenda. You've seen it embedded in my dashboards, right? So the same information can live in multiple places so it doesn't get lost. I know if a lot of you have a lot on the go and you're anything like me, then there's that tendency for if you put a task somewhere but you're not in that headspace, you kind of forget that it's there. And I want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to get missed. Yeah, this is my master tag database. We've got quite a few. So the tags are connected to, again, almost every other database in my space. So people, notes and ideas, knowledge hub, words and wisdom, right? There's my entertainment database. I can see my Netflix or whatever. Maybe some of you want to track your Netflix habits, right? It's really up to you what you want to track, what's going to be helpful for you. Oh, hang on a second here. There we go. So detailed. Yeah. How do you handle new incoming tasks and resources to use in inbox? Honestly, I handle it right inside my weekly agenda because that's kind of where I'm most active every day. So yeah, if I'm in focus, if there's a new task that pops up, I would just add it right here. You could also add it in your quick notes. You can totally create an inbox too. Like you saw on my collect and process, I have an inbox here. For me, I kind of use that inbox as collecting and storing information and data. Yeah, and as you guys are probably seeing in the chat, like there is so much to learn, and the more that you use it, the more you'll be like, oh, I could use it for this. I could use it for this. How do you insert a custom icon? Alexander, do you mean here, like for the actual database? You can click here, upload an image, add a link. Let me know if that clarifies. Words and wisdom, customer insight. Maybe some of you are, if you're doing any kind of marketing and you want to store clips of things that people are saying. Inspiration. I have an inspiration page where I can pull in like visual inspiration, swipe files, email templates, right? Just things that are impressive, landing pages. We can just show everything. There's probably a lot in there, right? Just like artists, courses, things that are interesting that you just want to store and save. Right, and I can give it a type. I don't always take the time to fill out these properties, so it's very like as needed as you go. Shared. I think I shared a template of my Knowledge Hub. Check out the Knowledge Hub crowdcast that we did. I'm just going to post that in the sidebar. I'd watch that first because I think we do link to some templates as part of that as well. Why do you call it a swipe file? What does that mean? Swipe files, I think it's like a marketing related term, but it's like swipe this copy. They're meant to be like examples that you can kind of copy paste. Tamerlan, welcome. Can you change an icon or cover to more? No, unfortunately, Tony, that would be amazing if you could kind of batch change emojis and such. That would be awesome. Okay, I'm going to take a peek at the questions. I know we still have some questions that have popped in. Is it possible to organize all the templates into different folders, such as personal, work, volunteer? Yes, absolutely. So this is something to be aware of too. If let's say you want to share, you have your own private tasks, but maybe you only want to share part of it with a team. And Aranti, let me know if you want to give me any other details, but absolutely you can, you could have your own like personal, let's call this one personal, make another one volunteer. And then you might actually still want to have tasks at the top of each of those, right? But you could say tasks filtered to only show area is volunteer, area is personal, area is whatever. I refer to them as areas. That's from Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain. So figure out like what are the areas of your life, and those would be a property. So your tasks can be associated with a property, or you might want to have totally separate information here. And this almost becomes its own work hub with its own set of task databases. Maybe you've got a team, roles and responsibilities. You can have those as pages. So like, roles and responsibilities. And you can do short, I'm not going to do the key commands because I want to make sure that you guys know what I'm actually doing here. But again, I can turn this into anything that I want. I can turn this into a page. So now I can click in. And that way, if you just want to share the roles and responsibilities page with someone, right, I can share that. I can make it a public link and remove ability to duplicate if I want to, and then copy the link and share it with you. Or I can invite someone in by email and give them full access, full edit, can comment, or can view. So you have some options. So maybe, for example, your internal team, it wants to be able to see all of this, but maybe you have a client or someone you want to be able to share just this document with that. You can totally do that without having them see all of your tasks and everything that's important. And then I would probably create different dashboards too. So you'd have your like volunteer dashboard, personal, but again, they might be pulling in the same central databases. It's totally up to you how you want to do that. Okay. Interested in roll-ups? Yeah, Mark, I would definitely recommend checking out the session that we did all about roll-up. I think we had 2 sessions. So one was relations, because you can't do a roll-up without a relation. So definitely check out that session that we did. I think that will help clarify, because it's kind of advanced. There's a lot to it. We probably won't have time to go into it. Oh, Aranti, if you don't, that's a great point. If you don't have a paid pro account, you might not see these options here. Like you might only just basically have a private setup and see pages in here, and then favorites. And you'll only see favorites once you favorite something. But because I have a team account, I can see workspace and I can see shared. And I think shared will only appear if you share one of these pages. So only if I make this available to my workspace, that's going to appear under shared. Hopefully that makes sense. Can I link to an item on my computer like a Word document? So Darren, I would recommend, you can drag and drop, like you can very quickly drag PDFs and files and folders right into your pages. So here's like just dragging a Zoom call into there. It's a big one, so it might take a minute to load. But yeah, you can drag a PDF, you can drag a Word doc, you can embed. You'll notice too, there's like Google Drive, Tweets, Google Maps. There's all sorts of embeds in here as well. Something for those of you who are using Notion for work. There's like team, SOPs, right? This is an embed of Whimsical, so you can see this is a place for all of your team members to kind of see everything in one place as well. And this is a pretty simple page, just has a couple pages at the top, SOPs, you know, team members, roles and responsibilities. So you have lots of different options. Can we just, yeah, we won't have time to get into Zettelkasten. And there's a great video. I don't know if Danny or someone shared it in the chat, but definitely check out the Knowledge Hub session that we did. That is very close to what they're doing with Zettelkasten. Yeah, Mochi's customer happiness. Okay, I don't have a workspaces section. Yeah, so we just covered that, workspaces versus team features. Bidirectional linking. I know that Notion has been asked that quite a bit. I can't speak on that. I hope that that does happen in the future. It wouldn't surprise me if they figured out how to do that. Notion Premium features is limited to students with .edu email. In India, we don't have a system in which your university provides .edu emails. I'm pretty sure there's a solution. I would reach out to Notion directly about that. I don't necessarily know the answer to that. Oh, copying templates from page to page. Yes, you can. Like you can copy templates from page to page. So, it's. I would say it's not a beginner use case, but yeah, you can move anything from anywhere, right? So let's say I open up one of these, like this webinar project. So you're saying this, for example, are you talking about database templates? There's actually two different types of templates. I don't know who asked that question, but can you suggest a format for a wizard type of site where the user is asked questions and content is delivered based on their interests? That's definitely not a beginner use case. So I don't know if I'll be able to answer that today. Yeah, sorry. I think that would definitely be a little overwhelming, I think, for a beginner session today. But I'll like all of these questions too. We take them into account, and we can always do future sessions around this. I know we've had a lot of people ask about courses as course creators, course delivery, tracking curriculum, and things like that. So that's definitely something we are going to dive into because it's a pretty unique use case. Choose your own adventure. Okay. Yeah, we covered uploading your own custom emojis. How's the progress on the API? I don't know. I think it's soon. I know they've built it into their pricing chart. So if you have a team account, then you get access to the API. So I don't know. Hopefully soon. I know. Any resources or templates for writers? I simply use the gallery view for chapters. Oh, interesting. Winnie, I don't know if you saw the session with Dan Shipper. He did one on Notion for writing novels that might be helpful for you. Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows of any templates specifically, but Dan kind of walked through his process. And what was cool is he hardly used any databases in his setup. So I thought it was a pretty neat setup. So you can always click on the Notion Crowdcast at the top, and you'll be able to see all of our past events, or you can check them out on YouTube and look for Dan Shipper, Notion for, I think it was called Notion for novel writing. Hope that helps. Is there a reason when you adjust the size of the video, the vid no longer works? Kobe, so is that something where you've embedded an image or embedded a video inside of Notion, but then you tried to resize it and the video stopped working? I haven't experienced that personally. But I would reach out to the team if that is an issue. You can export your Notion workspace. I think you have options for, let's see here. I haven't done it in a while. I don't know if you do it on a per page basis, or it might have to happen on a per page basis, and you can choose whether or not to include, subpages is only on the enterprise. So you can choose, PDF, HTML, Markdown. So you have some options there. And you can export these, export as a CSV as well for any of that stuff that you really need in a CSV file. Daily, weekly tracker, breaking down of tasks. I tend to set a large task for myself. Currently don't have a way of tracking them. Yes, Eddie. So I think we've had so many people ask about the sort of daily, weekly tracking and tasks. And I think that it would be helpful to go way deeper into more of a weekly agenda planning session to cover that in more detail. Because I do think a lot of folks struggle with that. Again, those giant lists of things to do, and how do you track it, and where does it all go? So I think we should do a session devoted to that. So yeah, stay tuned, Eddie. We'll get you covered. And I can also record an updated version. I know some of the YouTube videos I have are a couple steps behind, and I do it a little bit differently now. So I'm definitely happy to cover that. There's so much customization that I can think of with daily use for Notion. Can you help me think of a few ideas? Yeah, we've covered some of them today, but I mean, I use it for gardening. I use it for, not travel anymore, but yeah, travel, entertainment, my journal. I use my journal every single day. Track my moods. Obviously, I use it for task tracking. Any of your hobbies and activities, anything that you want to be, tracking your notes around, creative idea generation. I would typically, I recommend for people to start with the part of their life that has the most friction, right? So it's like, if it's your task management, you don't feel like you have a handle on that. For me, it was my weekly agenda. I had like paper agendas. I was kind of using Asana. I had Evernote. Like it felt kind of messy, and I was pulled in so many directions. So I focused really hard on what is an ultimate weekly agenda system that's going to make sense for me. And I kind of devoted all my time to that. So I usually recommend pick a project, pick one thing to kind of play with, wrap your head around, and figure out. That way you can learn Notion while building something quite practical. Yeah, I think journaling is a great place to start. Yeah. There's lots of templates out there as a starting point, but definitely don't hesitate to make it your own, for sure. So I hope that's helpful. There's no stupid questions here. Can you add, so you can't, someone asked about adding different colors for tags other than the default ones. You can change the defaults that it gives you, but you only have so many options. So like option 1, right, it's blue. I can go back and change it to one of these default colors. I can't actually add new colors, unfortunately. Maybe someday we'll be able to do that. Hope that helps. Created a lot of daily pages based on my own template. After editing this template, I'd like to switch the existing daily. Okay, this is a great question. And when you create a new template that you love, it will not retroactively apply to other pages. I do not even worry about that. To me, that is like a low value activity to go back and like make sure that my journal looks like the current journal. To me, that isn't really adding anything. To me, that's kind of busy work. So I don't worry about it. I just, moving forward from this day forward, this is what my agenda looks like, or this is what this type of page looks like. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Otherwise, you're just like reformatting stuff, but I'm not sure if there's a really high value use case for that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Ooh, how is a block defined in Notion? Do duplicate instances count as more than one? Yeah, like you can basically look at it as like anything that has these 6 dots. That's a block. This is a block. This is a block. Text is a block. Everything, even this blank thing is a block. Even blank fields here have a link. So I can actually I can actually link to this like a table of contents. Like let's say I want to link lower on the page here. I can copy this link and then let's link this up. Great. So I can click on that and that takes me lower on the page. So yeah, blocks, everything is a block essentially. How do you lock a page to prevent other users from messing with it? Yeah, every page has a page lock here. Lock page content to prevent accidental edits. Right, so now I can't edit that, can't accidentally do stuff here. So that might be helpful. Great. I'd love to know for which things it's good to have a separate database versus an inline database. Oh, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but with inline, it just means you don't have to leave the page. So again, just having like these could all be separate databases in the sidebar, right? Like clients could be one. Let's unlock this page so I can make edits. Let's say I want this to be clients here. I want this one to be here, right? And those are just all individual databases. But to me, it's not as helpful when everything is separate. It's only once you kind of bring them together that you don't have to click around. You don't to me, it takes less mental RAM to deal with it. Some of that's personal preference. There are some things that I would still kind of have as their own databases, but I almost always, even if I've created a database somewhere, I'm embedding it in another page to actually work with it. Hopefully that helps. And again, that's personal preference. You can look at different people's spaces and they'll look very, very different. But I know personally, again, that ability to bring it all into one place is so helpful. Yeah, it just gives more context to what those databases are doing. With which database should you start? Master task list, and then what are the good relations to make? Julia, I would recommend check out. I have a video on Para, projects, areas, resources, archives, but really a master task database, some kind of knowledge and resources. If you create content, I'd have some kind of content library, content hub. I love a master tag database. Master tag database, projects, goal. I mean, I do a lot of goal setting, planning. So I have like goals and outcomes as well. Those are some of the major, I think if you had those, you'd be in a pretty good spot. Projects are basically containers for a group of tasks, right? A project is just a grouping of tasks. So I always relate my projects to a number of those. Can you add an icon or cover image to multiple pages? No, we covered that. Okay. What's the use of creating a relational database? Can you give an example of use? I know some of these questions might have come through earlier. So did we clarify that? Like if I'm looking at a project, I just want to see the tasks that are connected just with that project. And that allows me to filter and only show, I just want to see the tasks that are due from this project. It allows you to do a lot more filtering. Yeah, so the outcomes are really specific. So I see, Julia, when it comes to goal setting, it's like the goal is the big vision, like get fit or whatever it is. And then the outcome would be the things that it's actually going to take to get you there, the more specific, measurable ways to identify that the goal was achieved. So if you're like, I know someone had the example of writing a book, right? So you might have like your book project, and maybe your goal is to become a published author. One of the outcomes might be submit first draft to editor, right? There's going to be a number of outcomes that are going to relate to helping you measure whether that goal was achieved. So Venzi, a master tag database, that's the one we went over that has, it's just a database literally of tags that is connected to every other database. So if I open up a specific tag, I can see what are all of the books I'm reading related to that, who are the people that are talking about that topic, what are the tasks that might relate to that. It kind of helps unify so that if you ever want to go into your space and see something specific related to like psychology or whatever, you can go into that database and see everything kind of connected. And that also allows you to, if you're doing research, you can kind of go through the rabbit hole and connect related information. Cool. Yeah, goals, outcomes are the landmarks on the way there. Great distinction. Great. Okay, I know there's a lot of questions too that are still popping in that probably warrant their own session. I know a lot of you have been great. You've stayed late, and I know we've covered a lot more than just just the basics of day one. But I wanted to kind of give you a sense of like core building blocks, also what you're working toward. So please let me know how we can continue to help you in this journey. We will send out a list of some of the other videos that might be helpful, because I know there's really specific use cases here, and everyone kind of has a different, different thing they want to see. I definitely have plans to share some of this in more detail with more videos. I know the goal setting, tracking, and that sort of thing is something people have mentioned. Certainly the task management, having a workflow around the task management, because I think with Notion, you can build these different pieces, but it's weaving it together and having a workflow and a process that is where it starts to make sense. But I think that's also the hardest part, right? So please be patient with yourself. We're going to do our best to cover more of these use cases in more detail. Some of them we've already done, and again, we'll send you links to that. Thank you so much, C, for that. It's always such a challenge to know how to explain and how to teach it to people, knowing that there's just so much that is possible and you have so many different use cases. So where can I get this workspace to do? Yeah, I'm happy to share. Let's share this with you so you can see what I did here. Let's make sure. I don't think I'm linking to any other databases. So yeah, this is very messy, of course, but you can play with it. I'm going to share this to the web, and I'm going to allow as duplicate. I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to paste this. I'll paste this in the chat so you can check it out to see what it looks like to bring that into your space. Yeah, one thing we could cover too is that the differentiation between like team and work-related tasks and then your own personal stuff, because there's a whole bunch of things to be aware of with that as well, where you don't want someone else to see something. But as an example, I could embed my task database here inside this page, and you will not see it because you don't have permission to see it. So you will only have permission to anything that is a child inside of this page. So that's an interesting way where you can collaborate with a team here, but then you could also embed your own private tasks and your team will not see it. Nobody else will be able to see it. That's a really fun way to kind of combine different tasks that live in different workspaces. Cool. Yeah, might need a rewatch. And Colby, definitely check out those videos in the course. You've got access to it. We go into definitely check out relations and rollups too. If you have maybe you're a little bit more comfortable with Notion too. We did a session with William Nutt where we went way more into detail about that, because that's when you can really supercharge your space. Danny, thank you so much for helping answer the questions in the chat. Again, Danny's going to be coming in, I think, in August. We're going to be talking more about like Notion for academic purposes as well, studies and that sort of thing. So yes, thank you for your patience and sticking it out for this nearly 2-hour session. I know there's still lots of questions. I'm going to go through them in more detail and see if we can't record some kind of like bite-sized videos to address those really specific use cases, and then schedule some future office hours to address these as much as possible. We do have these weekly, Alexander. So every week we have at least one office hours. Next week, actually, our guest is based in Japan, actually. So we're having an evening session Thursday of next week, and it's the Knowledge Hub on steroids. So if you like the Knowledge Hub stuff, the Zettelkasten, if you're curious about that, we're taking it to another level with that. So these office hours, you can always go to the Notion icon at the top, and you will see I think this is session 43, the 43rd office hours that we have done. We've been doing these since September every week. So if you are just getting started too, there's lots of other sessions that are really topical. We've done some on client management, again, the Knowledge Hub, task management, relational databases and rollups. We've covered a lot of this stuff in other sessions. Definitely go back, check some of those out, and yeah, keep an eye on the Notion Made Simple Facebook community is great. You can usually ask a question there and you'll have tons of people who are willing to help you out there. Can we ask questions via email so that you can embed the questions in new office hours or other videos? So you can add, if you add the questions to the ask a question area below, we export those and then we bring them into we have a Notion page where we actually track all of those questions as well. And we try to, group them together because there's obviously a lot of really common use cases. And we'll try and do our best to appeal to the masses and just make sure that people understand the different ways that they can use it for like really niche use cases. I know we've done a lot of publishing stuff as well. So anyone who does any kind of content creation, YouTube, all that good stuff, we definitely have some sessions on that, and we will continue to have more. We have some pretty cool guests coming up as well. So thank you everyone for coming, for your great questions. I hope this gets you started. For questions after the session, I mean, best place is probably to tweet me at Marie Poulin on Twitter. And again, I keep an eye on the Notion Made Simple Facebook group as well. So it's probably best to do that than to kind of put my email address out there. I do get a lot of questions in my inbox, and it's hard. I don't always have time to answer them all, but again, I try to group them together and just address them through YouTube videos if I can. So if there's something specific that you want to see, put it in the chat here, ask it in the ask a question area below the Notion Made Simple, or tag me on Twitter, and I will do my best to answer them. I know chances are if you have a question, other people also have a similar question too. So as much as possible, I try to do that teaching in public just so like other folks can benefit from it. Oh, don't even worry, Peter. It's all good. It's all good. You can pay it forward by, making your Notion workspace awesome. Great. And yeah, Danny's super active too. Danny's got his own YouTube channel as well. There's a Reddit group, Discord group, YouTube group. There's lots of resources out there to get you started. I hope this wasn't too overwhelming for some of you that were just starting. It's so hard not to want to go into all of the advanced use cases. Excellent. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and good luck notioning. Thanks, everybody.